Hi, I'm John from Autel. Today I want to show you some of the usage of our BT608 battery tester tool. This is a very unique tool on the market. It has a built-in printer. It's a pretty powerful tool. It allows us to not only test the batteries on vehicles, but also the starting and charging system. If you buy the optional battery accessory kit, the BAK kit, it will come with the extra little voltmeter module. It will also come with a set of nice voltmeter leads, some different types of adapters as far as probes and alligator clips, and also a high amp current clamp. So we're going to show you some of the different features and benefits of using this tool. It's the recommended tool by most manufacturers as opposed to the carbon pile tester of days gone past. I'm going to go ahead, this vehicle has a new battery in it, but I'm just going to simulate going through the testing procedures here with you. So I have two choices, in-vehicle or out-of-vehicle test. If the battery was not connected to the car, I would choose out-of-vehicle test, obviously. I'm going to do the in-vehicle test. I'm going to walk on over and bring this with me inside the car so I can read the directions as it tells me to go. But before we start doing any kind of test, I want to just talk to you about some of the different types of buttons that are on here. One of them has a diagnostic feature. One of them is a battery reset, battery replacement. These are going to be steps that I have to do to let the vehicle know on a late model vehicle that I've gone ahead and put a new battery in. With all the modern day technology, we have smart charging systems on cars. So a charging system that had a weak battery in it was putting a higher charging voltage output for long periods of time. And if I don't tell the vehicle that I put a new battery in, when I first start the vehicle up, it's going to want to continue that higher rate of charge, which would shorten the life of that new battery by overcharging it. So that's a very important step that we'd have to do. We'd also want to know if there's any kind of special procedures I have to do, like on this car, I have to do some stuff with the window switches. If it had a sunroof, I'd have to follow those directions as well. All that information is going to be found right inside the body of this tool. One of the nice things about this tool too is since it's this type of tool, it's got lifetime free updates. But one thing that really sets this tool apart is the lithium button. This has the ability to test lithium batteries for mild hybrids up to 48 volts, or if you want to count the charging system voltage in on that, you're looking at roughly, about 50 or so volts that I could actually test. The second screen here is how I turn on the multimeter, the update button everybody knows about. I have the ability to go ahead and store reports and print reports out and send reports to customers, take screenshots of different types of scenarios here. If say the battery hold down was missing on the vehicle, if the battery was damaged or there was some kind of leakage or something, I could add pictures to my report. All that would be found in the data manager section. So I'm just going to go back to the first screen here. We're going to cover not all the buttons, but some of the buttons here, the ones that you're going to use the most often. So I'm going to select in-vehicle test. Comes up with a screen, asks me what type of vehicle I'm working on. Notice it's got a very robust menu. I can test everything from car batteries, commercial truck batteries, to lawn and garden equipment and everything in between. So I'm going to select the automobile button. And I do have the actual VIN module plugged in here. So the vehicle communication interface is already plugged in. It tells me what the vehicle is supposed to have here. I'm going to say, okay, that all looks good to me. So at this point, I can go ahead. If I did not know where the battery was on certain types of vehicles, if I open up the hood and the battery's not in common locations, I could hit the battery location button. It would tell me where the battery's located, whether it be in the trunk, in a wheel well, whatever the case happens to be. Obviously, this one's right here underneath the hood, so I don't have to go through that. I'm going to hit the next button because the selection of batteries is correct on this one. It is a flooded style battery. We're going to use a cold cranking amp adjustment here, rating, and we're going to test it for the 525, which is what the vehicle is supposed to have. Here's where I can add any type of pictures or any type of notes. If there's poor installation or physical damage, I could take pictures of that stuff and also include them in with the report and also my notes. But I don't have to do anything on this particular car, so I'm just going to select the next button. It tells me to turn all the loads in the vehicle off because I'm doing an in-the-car battery test, which is going to test the battery first, then go into the starting system, then the charging system. So I've got to hit these little check boxes next to it saying I followed all those rules here, and I'm going to hit the start testing button. And right now we're supplying a small amount of current through these loads. It's going to go through the plates of the battery, and that's how it's actually performing a load test with a conductance style tester. Comes up, tells me that this battery is good. So at this point, once I hit the continue button, I could stop here if I wanted to and just create a report, but I'm going to go through all the features of a standard in-vehicle test here. I'm going to take this in the car with me, because the rest of this is going to tell me I got to do some certain things here, and I'll make it so that you guys, everything it tells me to do, I'll hold it up so you guys can see it. So I'm going to hit the continue button. It tells me to make sure the engine is off. The engine is off. I'm going to hit start testing, and it's waiting for the vehicle to start. So at this point, I'm going to start the vehicle up. Comes up, tells me that it has in fact passed the starter draw test. So it's telling me I'm good to go for the next test. Again, I could abort at this point and just create a report, but I'm going to hit the continue button, which is going to allow me to test the charging system. It's telling me to please wait, turn off all electrical appliances such as headlamps, AC compressor, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to turn that stuff off, and I'm going to hit the continue button. At that point, it was waiting for the idle to stabilize there, so it's off fast idle. Now it tells me to keep the engine speed at about 2,000 to 3,000 RPM and hit the continue button. So I'm going to raise the RPM up. I'm going to watch the tachometer on the car. I'm going to hit the OK button or continue. It tells me to release the accelerator, press continue. Turn on some electrical appliances. So I'm going to go ahead and turn some electrical appliances on. I basically turned on the blower motor, the rear defroster, the headlights. I'm going to hit the continue button. It wants me to raise the RPM back up. Watching that little tachometer on the screen there. Release the accelerator, hit the continue button. Turn off the ignition and press electrical appliances and press continue. So I'm going to turn off the ignition, hit the continue button. It tells me that my charging system output was too high. Now, there's a couple reasons for this. We're going to find out why it's saying it's too high here in a second. Notice that the no load voltage was at 15.13 volts there. If the battery replacement procedure was not done correctly, well, again, the car's computer is thinking that the battery is still the older battery. So at this point, I'm going to select both of these buttons. I'll do the battery replacement button first. We'll let it decode itself so it knows what type of vehicle we're working on. We're going to just get rid of that information here. Again, battery location, we already know where that's at. So I'm just going to select next. Battery suggestions, I'm going to say next. Preparation, highly recommended replacement with powering on. It is recommended to use the optional memory saver, which is outside underneath the hood. Connect the memory saver to the vehicle's DLC. And what this is telling us to do is go ahead and hook up this little cable, which I'll show you here in a second. This way the car's computer doesn't lose any of its memory. Obviously that step wasn't done, so battery replacement with power connected, turn the ignition off. So we'd follow those procedures there, select next, and then we'd go through and we'd actually go through and replace the battery and do the actual test. Now, after the battery's been replaced. Now, that's different from if I go back to the home screen here. Again, it's telling me don't forget my little VCI, to the battery reset button. Now the battery reset button, again, it's going to talk to the car. So we'll let it do its VIN communication. We're going to say OK. We're going to say next. Now here I've got two different types of scenarios. I got one that's called auto registration after battery replacement and one that's called electric appliance reset. So I'm going to select auto registration. We obviously didn't use the memory saver, so we're going to select yes. Now it's telling me what the procedure is I have to do. I have to turn the ignition on, fully open the window, fully close the window, and long press the close switch for 5 seconds and release the switch. So I'm going to do that to the best of my abilities here. I got to give the car some power. We started with the window down, so I'm just going to roll the window up. I'm going to have to put this on the outside because it knows that there was something in the way there. Okay, so we're going to fully open the window. Then we're going to fully close the window. And we're going to long pull on this switch for 5 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to say finish. Now there wasn't a sunroof on here, so I don't have to follow that at all. There's no sunroof on the vehicle, so I'm just going to say finish, but it would tell me the steps for that as well. It tells me the procedure has been completed. I'm going to select OK. Now I got the electrical appliance reset, so I'll click on that button, and I could choose just one of those two tests from the list if I wanted to do that. Now where I would do that one is, let's say somebody replaced the battery in here and they did not do this test. They did not tell the vehicle there was a new battery replaced or anything. Or maybe they did the power window one, but they didn't look up and they didn't notice the sunroof was installed on the vehicle. And now the customer brings you the vehicle and they say, hey, my sunroof doesn't work. And from talking to them, you figure out that, hey, this all started after the battery was installed. That's why we could break the two tests down like that. So at this point, we could go through the whole procedure again, but now when we did the whole test, it would tell us that it's actually not charging the output too high at this point. What I wanted to do just to make this video not real long is I want to show you some of the other features of this tool. So I'm going to go through, and again, out-of-vehicle battery test would be just the battery test. It would not include any kind of charging system or starting system types of test. I want to go to the multimeter function here. Now the multimeter function, again, is only going to become active if you have the battery accessory kit. And before I get too far ahead of myself, here is what the battery memory saver, again, an optional piece of equipment that you could buy. All of this stuff's very affordable. So basically you'd plug this into the OBD2 connector, you hook this up to either a known good battery or your jump box, whatever the case happens to be. At this point I got a couple choices what I want to do. Basic function is going to turn the tool into basically a digital multimeter of some sort. Leakage detection, if I click on that, this is basically telling me how I can use this tool to test for any kind of parasitic drain that may be killing the battery over time. So if the vehicle's shut off in a parking garage or in your garage at home, it sits all weekend, and then you go to crank the car over and it doesn't start. So it tells me to go ahead and open up the fuse box, turn off all the electrical appliances, lock the engine hood buckle, door buckle, tailgate. Basically, they don't want any kind of underhood lights or dome lights or anything on. Lock the vehicle with the key, and I would just go right through and follow the procedures and use it to test for any type of parasitic drain. Now, I can accomplish the same types of tests if I did not need the guided test like we were seeing here by going to basic functions. Now, if I hit the basic function button, it comes up and tells me, hey, you got to have the module plugged into the bottom of it, and you got to have some type of probe, right? So I'm going to say, okay, I've got that hooked up. Not sure the type of test I want to do yet, so I'm not too worried about the probe settings here. I'm going to say okay. It defaults into a regular DC voltmeter, so if I hook up a couple leads to the bottom of the module, and it's a graphing meter, which is nice, I can go ahead and just touch the positive and negative battery cable just so you guys can kind of see how it responds there. So it's telling me the battery's got 12.12 volts in it. Now the nice thing about a graphing meter is it's constantly recording. So it's kind of like the min-max feature on your conventional digital voltometers, where it's going to store the minimum and maximum of whatever setting you're trying to measure at the time. In this case, it happened to be voltage. Now, what that's nice for is if it's an intermittent battery drain. Let's say the car's computers wake up, the data bus network wakes up over time. If I was measuring amperage using the amp probe and clamp it around the cables like that, I can then go ahead and just keep this monitoring, and once those modules woke back up on the network, I would see that because it's recording it. That's the nice advantages of a graphing meter. So to change the type of scale that I'm doing here, at the bottom of the screen it says DC voltage. If I touch on it, I can go to AC voltage. Maybe I want to check the ripple effect of the alternator. I could go ahead and record resistance. DC current, this is all the amp clamps here. It's also a continuity tester and a diode tester. So in essence, you're buying a couple tools in one with this tool. It's basically a pretty powerful digital voltometer by itself here. But I'm going to go ahead and use the current clamp real quick. And to do that, I got to take these two leads out of the bottom of the module here, hook this up in the correct fashion. Now, it's asked me what scale I'm going to put it on here, so I'm going to go ahead and select a relatively lower amp scale, so 40 amp max at this point. The reason why I'm doing that is because the type of test that I'm going to simulate here is some type of parasitic drain, and I'm going to zero out the meter first here. So DC current 1 millivolts equals 10 milliamps, so that's the one I want to select. It's telling me how to actually do this. I'm going to say, okay, I'm good. I read all that stuff. Okay, so once I have the meter set up, I'm going to zero out the probe there by just simply pushing the button. And whenever you're hooking up an amp clamp, you want to make sure if there's 2 or more leads on one single post that you get around both of them. Otherwise, you may not be getting the full current drain on the battery, because one of those leads might be going to the fuse box, one might be going to something else, right? So you want to make sure that you have a good solid connection. Now I can get my overall current draw, which is basically what's happening with this vehicle in the off position. Now the same type of test can be done. A lot of times we get customers that will call in, they'll ask us, hey, if I'm doing a battery test and maybe it's not in the guided menu, which is very rare, most of the time they're working on like maybe a golf cart or something strange like that. If you understand how a battery works on a vehicle, you can still use this digital voltmeter that's in here to get results telling you whether or not the battery is good or bad. You saw how we used the multimeter and how we measured voltage, so we could get an open circuit voltage. We can then apply a load to that battery. The vehicle has its own ability to apply loads. So if it's a golf cart, electric golf cart, the load would be actually causing the golf cart to want to move. That's going to cause the drive motors to engage. So at this point, what I'd probably want to do is take my multimeter and I would have it on DC volts first, and I would go ahead and slightly give a little bit of gas on that golf cart example there, and that's going to apply its own load, even if it's not in there for a golf cart test or something. Same thing can be done with some of the lithium battery tests and stuff that maybe that particular vehicle you're working on maybe came from overseas or something. It's not in the actual drop-down menu. You can still use the voltmeter and the amp clamp and use the loads of the vehicle itself to get an actual overall insight as to whether or not that battery is good. However, the Autel does a great job for 99.99% of the vehicles that you ever want to work on is all going to be listed right out for you in its drop-down menu. So whether it's in vehicle or out of vehicle test, or even if it's lithium. So obviously this vehicle does not have a lithium, but I push on that just so you guys can kind of see it. It's going to try to decode the VIN. It tells me, hey, decoding failed. It failed only because this vehicle obviously doesn't support a lithium battery. But once it actually did come up that the vehicle would support a lithium battery, would be just like how we just previously saw, it would give me a list. So in that list would be possibly like a Dodge Ram, maybe some of the Chevy Tahoes and stuff that actually had mild hybrid style batteries in it. So I just wanted to take the time to share with you. Again, this is the BT608 family of battery testers from Autel. It does have the optional battery accessory kit with the various leads, and we also talked about the memory saver, again, another optional tool. So if you have any questions about this, be sure to reach out to your local distributor or contact somebody at Autel. We'll be more than happy to answer any kind of questions you have. Thanks for watching.